I got my undergraduate degrees in music ed, music performance, and music technology. So I did 3 degrees because my mom said, "Oh, you want to be a musician? I want you to be able to get a job." And so I did my undergrad at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And then while I was at Duquesne, I actually was invited to go to an international music festival in Germany and was invited to go study over there. But I ended up moving to Arizona instead, and did my master's and my doctorate in performance, and quickly realized that while I love playing orchestra music, that I didn't have the focus needed to really perfect excerpts and take auditions at the level that I knew I needed to. And so I also started to play a tremendous amount of chamber music when I was in my master's and my doctorate. And the last year of my doctoral degree, I started a chamber ensemble that I still have today, 15 years later. My chamber ensemble is called the Mill Avenue Chamber Players. It actually started as a harmony ensemble, so a double woodwind quintet. I received a grant from Arizona State University to start the ensemble, actually before arts entrepreneurship was really a thing. It was actually just a general grant to students in the university. Before the pandemic, I ran 5 different chamber music series throughout the valley. So Phoenix is quite large, and being an ensemble of 5, we could take the same concert and perform it in a variety of cities in the greater Phoenix area within 1 week. And that was kind of the format that we had before COVID. So we would rehearse once a week for a month, and then we would have the first week of the month, we'd have concerts typically Thursday through Sunday. And so it was fantastic because, we get to really, by Sunday, performing the same program 4 times in a row really helped solidify, the virtuosic aspects of our performance, and just how deeply we knew the material, and, as it and how we worked as a chamber ensemble, really. Just the level of nonverbal communication that happens during a concert, especially when you're in, a huge variety of performance settings that we saw throughout that time period. I actually run the ensemble as an LLC. I don't run it as a nonprofit, and I've actually found that has really a great number of advantages. Primarily, we don't have to have a board. I actually serve on a number of boards in the Phoenix area for other arts organizations, and so I've gotten to know the kind of the limitations that kind of organization can have. We're quite nimble. We can change direction as we see fit, and it helps us move very quickly. We're in residence at Phoenix College, which is where I teach, and so we hold open rehearsals throughout the year, and find different ways to give back to that community. We also held an annual summer chamber music camp, and we've been the nominee for the Governor's Arts Awards, the Mayor's Arts Awards, and we've been recognized by Chamber Music America for building long-term relationships in our community. This was our first performance, so you can see it was a double quintet. And to be honest, I thought my original intention was that everybody in the ensemble would have a task or a responsibility outside of just being a member of the ensemble, and so that the group would run itself. And it failed miserably. Absolutely, I ended up doing everything. I was so burnt out, and so I restructured it after the first year as just a woodwind quintet. Early on in the ensemble, we decided to grow roots in our community instead of becoming a touring ensemble. And I find that much more rewarding. I love to travel. I was the exhibits coordinator for 10 years with the International Horn Society, and so I would travel to all their international conferences and work with the exhibitors that were there. And so that provided me the opportunity to go to Australia and South Africa and Brazil, and make a family within that group of people. But with the chamber ensemble, we really wanted to be able to serve communities that weren't served by the larger arts organizations in town, like the symphony and the opera. They have their home in Central Phoenix, but you drive a half an hour any direction, and you'll find a community that's looking for opportunities to hear live music. So this is a picture of the first series that I started, and as you can see, they're all older folks. There's a city just outside of Phoenix called Sun City. It's a retirement city, there are no public schools. And so I've done a lot of work out there and started a chamber music series that's actually 9:30 on Wednesday mornings. So on the weekends are packed with activities, but people were looking for an opportunity to come together. And so I said, what about a coffee and pastries series where people sit around banquet tables, they have a chance to be together, to talk to us. You can see we're very close to the audience members, and a way to have community at a time in the week when people needed it. This is also from the same series. This is Edith. Edith was a Rosie the Riveter. And so one of the annual concerts that we do, Rosie Riveters were women that went and worked in factories during World War II while their husbands or family members were serving in the military. So that's how they supported the war effort in World War II. And so Sun City, Arizona has the largest community of living Rosie the Riveters. So we actually, for Veterans Day, we do a concert for the Rosie the Riveters, celebrating their service to the military. And then on the right upper hand corner, we did a concert called Coming to America. We program our entire season around a theme. And that particular year was about time travel. So we did a concert of Renaissance music with a vocal ensemble. We did a concert of about immigration. And so we decided to take a world map and take it along to these 5 concerts that we did throughout the week to see, people celebrating where they came from. And so it was really great at the end of this week to see, just how everybody ended up in the greater Phoenix area, but came from a very wide community around the world. One of the things that has helped support us financially, as I mentioned, we don't run off of grants, is our educational partnerships, and we have a partnership with a school system called the Great Heart Schools, and they put a high value on the arts, and especially the classical arts, and so because we are able, or I am able, because of my background, to program according to their curriculum, their school curriculum, we have a great partnership with them where we program 10 concerts a year. It's not always woodwind quintet, but based around what they're studying that month. And so we're able to fund other projects that we want to do through our partnerships with the Great Heart Schools. We also have a long-standing relationship with the Glendale Public Library, another suburb here in Phoenix. We've been the 8-time recipient of the Performing Arts Partnership Grant, so we partner with the library, and we've continued a series that they lost funding for. So again, we bring in a variety of chamber ensembles to perform in this really gorgeous space. If you're ever looking for an interesting venue, check out your local libraries. A lot of them were built before the 70s, actually have small auditoriums. This auditorium seats about 120 people. And as you can see, we have families there, we have older folks there, we have people that live in group homes that might be intellectually disabled, and they all, it's a really fantastic experience to be able to give back in the community that way. We celebrated our 10th season 5 years ago now, which is crazy to think about. But we, as I mentioned, we pick a theme for every season, and so that year it was something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. And so we actually commissioned 5 new works for our 3rd album. And then each concert also had a standard piece of woodwind repertoire. And then we also have done a number of transcriptions. And so that was how we framed that season. And then we did an entire concert of blue. So of course we did like Blue Danube Waltz, but then we also did rock tunes that had to do with blue. And so it was, that really helped shape how we frame our season. And if you're doing 50 concerts a year, it can get really hairy really quickly. So it kind of gives us a focus. One of the things that I found is difficult and really rewarding is building an audience. And as we've worked over the past 15 years in these different, really different communities, it's all about building trust. I know that we can program anything we want. It doesn't matter how wacky it is. It doesn't matter how standard it is, that we've taken that time to build our relationship with our audience. And so they trust us with their time, their money, and their experience. Our concerts are all only an hour long. We don't do anything longer than an hour. We find that, my favorite quote I've ever heard was from a professor at Peabody, and he said nobody needs to eat 2 Thanksgiving dinners anymore, right? That classical music was a form of entertainment, before there was radio, before there was television. And so, people would go to a concert that was 4, 5, 6 hours long. And so we don't need that anymore. And so we have to kind of, evolve how we think about concerts and how we present what we're passionate about. The other thing that we do is we pick a organization every year and donate. As I mentioned before, we did that Coming to America concert. It actually ended up being, ironically, a couple weeks after our former president was sworn into office. And so if you remember, there was an immediate ban on who could immigrate to America. So ironically, we're doing this concert about immigration. And this is when the Muslim ban came out. And so that weekend, we actually donated everything we made to the ACLU. So just kind of putting a non-musical action into what we're passionate about. We've also raised money for Best Buddies, which is a program that pairs typical high school students with disabilities to create friendships. A lot of times students don't have an opportunity to interact with students with disabilities. And so, these worlds kind of are very separate for high school kids. I have a stepdaughter who's developmentally disabled, and so we've given to them. Rosie's House is an organization that I work with, and then 1 in 10 is a program for LGBTQ youth, homeless youth, giving them a shelter and safe place here in Phoenix. I find that giving something first, whether it's your time or your expertise, will lead the door. It will open the door to lots of possibilities. The gentleman on the right-hand side his name is John Steinmetz. He's a really well-loved composer, especially in the woodwind world. And then on the left is Sterling Beoff. He is just retired as one of the radio announcers for our local classical station. And we had the opportunity to work with John, my chamber ensemble, a number of years ago. And when we played at the International Horn Conference in Los Angeles, we invited him to come to our concert. He lives in the LA area. And with the idea that we wanted to ask him if we could record a quintet of his. That's a really standard piece of repertoire. There's already 2 recordings of it, but from when the piece came out about 25 years ago. And he was delighted. We actually did an album entirely of his music, the first time an album just of his music had been recorded. And he actually came to Phoenix to produce the album for us. So we built this fantastic relationship. I knew Sterling, and he had us both in for an interview while John was in town. And then building relationships also exists on a personal level for our ensemble. We spend a lot of time together outside of rehearsals. We typically go to Mexico twice a year. We go to the beach for the weekend. We don't take our instruments. We just hang out. We play card games. We swim. We make food. So the bonds of our ensemble go a lot deeper, and I think that really helps what we do as a group together. So as I mentioned, this is actually from our recording. You'll see the quintet, our recording engineer is there, John is there, and then also we had the opportunity to work with the Pacific Arts Woodwind Quintet, which is at the University of the Pacific. And so we actually had them out to record a dectet of John's. And so one of the things that I typically do after the series of concerts that we have is I have everybody over for dinner. So we have a Sunday afternoon concert. We're done at 4. Everybody comes over for spaghetti dinner, and it's just a great way to kind of celebrate and wrap up that chunk of concerts that we've done. As I mentioned, we've been nominated for the Governor's Arts Awards, and then there's a photo or a image of our first 2 albums. Through our partnerships, our clarinet player there on the right-hand side, she is actually the educational director for the Musical Instrument Museum. And the Musical Instrument Museum is here in Phoenix. The person who started it, the CEO, is actually the founder of Target. And he's a huge museum buff. And he discovered that nowhere in the world was there a museum of instruments and people playing those instruments in their traditional settings. This is actually a permanent display, a permanent exhibit about timbre. And so we were asked to come and record at the museum, and now we're a part of the permanent exhibit of the museum. My full-time job is I am the coordinator of instrumental music at Phoenix College, which is the oldest community college in the country. It was founded in 1920 and has always been a fully integrated institution, despite the fact that the schools in the city of Phoenix did not integrate until the 60s. When I was hired, we are a Hispanic serving institution, and there were no Hispanic performing arts ensembles on campus. And so one of the first things that I did was to start a mariachi program. And this is actually their first performance. The gentleman right there in the middle, right beside the guitarron, he's actually one of our local high school teachers who has a very successful mariachi program. And so in creating a partnership with him, we've been able to invite ensembles from his school and also from Rosie's house onto our campus. And a lot of the parents of my students from Rosie's house and from Phoenix College and the local high schools have never been on a college campus. It's not somewhere that they've felt welcomed. Or somewhere that they felt like they belong. And so I've worked really hard to create those opportunities and bring people onto campus and let them know that this is a resource for them, whether they're a student or not, whether it's to come to performances, whether it's to access our library or other facilities that we have. And so it's made some really fantastic partnerships in the past 4 years there. I oversee all the entire instrumental program, so a band, orchestra, our jazz bands. We started a steel pan ensemble this year, flute choir. So I oversee all of that, and it's a really rewarding job. I've written a couple of books. This is my second book, and I'm staying there with the former president of the International Horn Society, who actually also teaches up in Washington, Jeff Snedeker. He wrote the foreword to my book, but this book really is a flashback to my music education training. So Zoltán Kodály was a Hungarian music educator, and he really was dismayed at the state of teaching music back in the 1800s. So he's been around for a while, but he really thought that music of the mother tongue of the original culture of a child is the best way for students to be introduced to music, and also to become familiar with their musical heritage and musical heritage of other people from around the world. Music is a way for us to relate to each other. So most of my students, I found, as my horn students, were not familiar with American folk music or much folk music at all. So I found that this was a great tool to serve teaching musicianship to beginning musicians. If a student knows how to sing, a really simple song, it correlates very well to playing the horn. And then the way that Kodály introduces syllables, he starts with mi and sol, which are two intervals that are very easy to go between on the horn, right? And so by teaching in a more musical way, I find that I'm able to help students learn how to play the horn in a much more satisfying way than just playing whole notes and half notes like they do in standards of excellence for months and months and months and years. So this book is in the process of being cross-published for all band instruments and orchestra instruments, which we call a PIG in business language. It's a perpetual income generator. So I was smart enough, knowing that when I started talking about this with my publisher, that I wrote in my contract that I would still receive a percentage of all the profits for every single book that was sold for all instruments. So as I mentioned, I teach for Phoenix College. I used to teach adjunct. I taught adjunct for 10 years before I got my job full time, which I highly encourage as you go, if you go forward in your education, get a master's degree, that teaching adjunct is a great way to have a very stable income, and it provided me the opportunity to do a lot of different things in that time period, to freelance, to play with the symphony, to run my chamber ensemble, to teach. I've taught in Germany, and next year I'm going to go and teach in Tanzania. So the flexibility of being an adjunct faculty member is really helpful. Was really helpful in my career. And then, as I mentioned, I've performed with the Phoenix Symphony, the opera, and I played for the International Horn Society workshops in Australia, England, South Africa, Brazil, Los Angeles, and other cities in the United States. And then I've also played a lot in Mexico and China and Venezuela. And so I feel very fortunate. I grew up in a really small town, and to have the opportunity to travel and see the world has been really, really rewarding. This is the quintet right in front of Disney Hall in Los Angeles. While I love what I do, I found, especially during COVID, but before COVID, that I have a lot of interest outside of just being a musician and just working a lot, which is something that can tend to happen with musicians. We find ourselves busy during the week and also having concerts on the weekend. And I made a very conscious shift to make more time for other things in my life. I love excuse me, camping. I love going to national parks. I also started taking up ceramics about 5 years ago. And I find that the focus needed to work in ceramics, especially at the wheel, is very similar to practicing. And so it's something that I greatly enjoy. And that's my husband and my stepdaughter. So, it's okay to do other things besides music. It will make you a more well-rounded person. And when you come back to doing what you love in music, you will have a greater appreciation for it. I also have gotten into cycling. I've done about 4,000 miles since the pandemic started. I spent my summer vacation, I flew to Pittsburgh, and I biked from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C. over 5 days with a friend. And so just, it's okay to take time to have other passions and other interests throughout your career. We actually received a grant, a diversity grant. Our Sunis is also a composer. He's written some fantastic stuff for a woodwind quintet, and also woodwind quintet educational concerts. And the last thing that he wrote for us was a setting of North American folk tales, but they are all folk tales that made their way to America from immigrants. And so there's a tale from China, one from Mexico, there's a Native American tale, and so we received a grant to record these. But we have some opportunities on the horizon. We're actually going to go to Ireland in March, and then we're going to be traveling to Mexico next May. So we're going to have 3 concerts in the spring. We're going to do we have about 20 transcriptions that we've done over the past 15 years, and we're actually going to record those. We were going to do another album. We're actually going to record them on as YouTube videos so that they're accessible for people that purchase our transcriptions. So just another way to share the information that and the music that we've gathered over the past 15 years.
You do so much, and you have done so much. I mean, there's grant writing, there's finances, there's publicity, there's marketing, and you kind of have tapped into a bunch of different fields in music. And if you picked me up and put me in your life, I would flounder because I don't know how to do all of those things. How did you learn how to do all of those things?
That's kind of my nature. I love to learn. I love to create opportunities, not just for myself, but for the people around me. And honestly, we graduated with our doctorate in 2008, right when, the crap was hitting the fan as far as the economy, and anybody that had a university job was holding on to it. Anybody had an orchestra job was holding on to it. And I just, I was like, well, we've got to figure out something, and I want to keep playing with my friends. And so here's an opportunity for us to create an ensemble. And to be 1,000% honest, I've become a much better musician the past 15 years than I would have if I wouldn't have had the ensemble to push me and to keep me growing as a musician.
So basically, you had an idea, you researched it, you attempted it, and then you adjusted based on what you learned.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, at first the group failed. I mean, it was a total failure because the idea of the group didn't work. So you pivot and you change and you adjust. And I think that's what's kept it going that long. Don't be afraid to try things. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you will gain a lot more experience and knowledge from trying than not doing it at all. Um, yeah, that's my biggest recommendation. And learn how to write contracts. Yeah, technically, I own the ensemble. Just from a financial business point of view. Honestly, nobody else wants to do it. But within the ensemble now, we have kind of different responsibilities. One of us handles personnel management. One of us handles the library. I handle all the contracts and everything like that. And then as far as profit sharing, and we don't do the ensemble to make money. I mean, we make money. It is also the most rewarding musical thing that we do. Everything else we keep in the bank because you never know what's coming next. So honestly, right now we have, this will be pretty astounding, but we have about $15,000 in the bank, and that's so that should everything dry up, we have probably a year to pivot and figure out something else. But instead of having $0 and just have it in everybody's pockets, it serves us much better to keep it in the bank so that we can keep the ensemble moving forward. And everybody has access to the bank account. Like everybody can log in and see what's going on. So there's no trust issues. So that's everybody knows that's how the ensembles run. I make sure to play my horn every day. No, one of the things that I do at my college is I get there early. My students have their first class at 8:30, and so I try to get there before 8 a.m. And so that we all spend that time warming up together. So I'm in my office warming up, but just kind of keeping that sense of what a music school should be like. And then I try to spend about an hour or two a day practicing. Most of it is kind of technique work, just to make sure that I'm really agile on the horn. Um, I, yeah, I would love to say that I have time to practice more than that, but honestly, with everything else, it's hard to find the time. So I carve out the time when I need to, but consistency is been the most important thing, just to know that everything feels good and that I can, do everything I need to do.
You do a lot of stuff. How do you manage your time to get all these things done and still have downtime at
Right,
home and with your family and other hobbies that are not professionally related?
right. So I will mention that when I was in school, when I was in grad school specifically, I would get to school usually around 6 a.m., which I know sounds insanely early, but I would go to the gym and then I would practice so that before my 9 o'clock class, I got two things that were really important to me out of the way. And I still find exercise very important. I go to the gym probably 3 times a week. I probably cycle once or twice a week. And so I know that, for sleep, for stress, for, just physical, overall physical health, that exercise is really important to me. I'm not, crazy fit in shape, but it is really important to include in your regimen. I actually sit down with a lot of my students, just as an aside, and help them figure out their own time management because a lot of times as in undergrad, you're trying to manage school and then also work and relationships and just kind of navigate all this stuff. I will say that through the pandemic I've started working a lot less. That on the other side of it, I've restructured my work schedule. I was putting in about 30 hours by midday Wednesday, because I was conducting two community ensembles that were in the evening. So I was at school at 8 a.m., but I was still there at 9:30 at night. I live a half mile away from school, which is a blessing and a curse because people think that you're available all the time. And then I try not to do anything on the weekends that's not work related unless I need to or if I have a concert. Because when I started my job, I would literally have like one weekend off a semester, and that's just not sustainable and it's not healthy, honestly. So I make plans. I kind of plan out my semester in advance of when I want to go camping, when I want to go to the beach, and because those are things I love to do, and it shouldn't be just relegated to a couple weeks in the summer. Figure out what you're passionate about, and figure out how to make that next step happen. And actually, I would start doing it now. I wouldn't wait till you graduate. It takes a long time for things to ferment, which is a good word to use. I mean, as far as building a professional, career or to grow and have roots, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes years. But start looking around you and seeing, what skills don't I have yet that I need to get, and you might not know what that is, but start looking about what job opportunities there are right now, and is that something that you can do, or is there more that you need to learn while you're still in school to make that happen? Look at everything that's happening around you. Be aware of what's going on musically, what ensembles are out there, what music academies are out there. It might help you, like might spur some creativity as far as whether you want to be involved in those ensembles, whether you want to try something different, that would complement what's happening in your area. But don't be afraid to start reaching out now and seeing how you can be a part of those organizations. So, yeah, it takes time.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Press.